Tottenham's path to the 2025-26 season under Thomas Frank has been revealed, and he will be a very happy man in terms of how the fixtures have fallen for Spurs. There is a lot of pressure on Thomas Frank coming into this new job, leaving Brentford, this big step up to replace Ange Postecoglou, a man who is undoubtedly going to go down in Tottenham history as the man to end Spurs' trophy drought, to win their first European trophy in 41 years. And therefore, it is imperative that he has a very quick and very good start to life in North London. The Premier League fixtures for the upcoming campaign have officially been released, and it is actually a lot better than I think a lot of us thought it would be. A lot of the time Spurs have been shafted with the fixtures, and we've had very important, very difficult games all cramped together. And yes, we have periods across the season where it is naturally a little bit more difficult than others. However, I think in general Spurs have been quite nice in terms of how most of the fixtures have fallen. We all remember how Ange Postecoglou's tenure started at Spurs. We went undefeated for the first 10 games of his first season. We were top of the league, and then came the Chelsea game at home where everything just fell apart. And funnily enough, it is falling in a very similar way for Thomas Frank. Our first 10 games are actually relatively good in the grand scheme of things, and then comes Chelsea. So for the first few months, Frank's official first Premier League game in charge of Spurs is going to be against Burnley on the 16th of August at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And another interesting thing, Spurs are actually at home for their opening and closing games of the Premier League season, which is a very rare sight for Spurs. We're not like Manchester United have been put at home for their first game 9 years in a row now. In Spurs and Thomas Frank, we have got an opener against Burnley at home, which I think is the best possible outcome for the reason that the Super Cup takes place 3 days before that as it stands. We don't know whether this Burnley game may well get changed to a different date because of that midweek trip to Udinese to face PSG with a trophy on the line. But I think obviously Thomas Frank will want to go all out to try and win that piece of silverware and get off to the best possible start at Tottenham, and to come back into things and kick off the campaign at home to Burnley. I don't think he could have asked for much more. Of course, we know that last season Tottenham lost at home to the relegation candidates Ipswich and Leicester. We both lost at home to them, so it's of course not a given and it's not a guaranteed 3 points, but at least it's not Manchester United at home or Arsenal at home or Liverpool or someone like that. It is a team where whichever team we put out onto the field, we should be favourites to win it. So that's a good thing. Our first away trip of the season is against Manchester City, which is, of course, a much tougher task. Spurs naturally have a very good record away to Manchester City. We always seem to be able to pick up results there. Brentford also had a very good record against Manchester City while Thomas Frank was in charge there. So I'm hoping that that trend kind of continues. And then if we have a look at the fixtures after that, Bournemouth at home, West Ham, Brighton, Wolves, Leeds, Villa, Everton. Those are our first sets of games, and that takes us up to the end of October. And when you look at those fixtures on paper, you'd like to think that Spurs can win a lot of those games. Now, the expectations going into this season is going to be really weird because, of course, we lost, 19 of our Premier League games or whatever it was in the end under Ange Postecoglou last season. But expectation from Daniel Levy, from the fans, from everybody involved in the club is going to be that we pick up a lot more wins. And for Thomas Frank, who's coming in, he's going to try and revamp the squad. He's going to introduce new ideas, get to know the players. He's still going to be settling in, even though we have already announced him. I think that set of fixtures is the best possible scenario for him to try and get off to a quick start in a very similar way that Ange Postecoglou did. And if we do follow a similar pattern where we are able to somehow come through most of those first sort of 9 games with maximum points or near to maximum points, I know City are in there, I know West Ham are in there, I know Aston Villa are in there, but they're not games that you look at and think, yes, we are definitely going to lose those. Maybe I'm just projecting false confidence. I don't know. Maybe I've forgotten how bad we really were in the 24-25 season. But if we come through all of that, our first game in November is Chelsea at home. And we know in the past that our games against Chelsea they're write-offs. Something always seems to go wrong. We've had the 2 red cards against them. We've had the collapse that iconic high line on the halfway line with 9 men against them. I think Chelsea's record at our stadium is something like 6 wins, 1 draw and 1 loss. So this is a sort of perfect opportunity for Spurs to put things right. And then we look at the rest of November as well. We've also got Manchester United and Arsenal in a row with that 3 block of games. So that's where it starts to get tough. And in February as well, the fixture list is tough. It's United away, Newcastle at home, Arsenal at home, and then leading on into March, we've got to play the likes of Liverpool, Nottingham Forest as well. So the second half of the season, I think, stacks up a little bit tougher against us. But there are no excuses for Thomas Frank and Tottenham not to hit the ground running in the start of this new season. And I don't think that's unfair to say. And the news coming out of Tottenham is that Frank wants to put his stamp on the Tottenham squad over the summer. He wants to revamp it. He wants to sign players. He wants to really take control of things, which is absolutely brilliant. But patience is a very interesting thing with Spurs and Spurs fans in particular, just purely because we never seem to have too much of it. We like to give a manager a few games, it'll likely start really well, and then when things start to get rough, the sort of tension begins to rise, fans start to turn on each other and turn on the manager and players. However, I do just think the way that the fixtures are spread out this season, it's perfect, really, for Tottenham. Of course, we've got to manage Champions League on top of that as well, and I do think there are a couple of games in and after the Champions League match days that will make it really tough. City, one of them, although they will have to play Champions League themselves. So Thomas Frank is sitting on his holiday still, which is why we haven't had an official interview from him yet, an introduction, and why we haven't really been moving too much on transfers, I guess, although the rumours grow more and more each day as to who Tottenham are interested in signing. But we now have the picture. We now know how Thomas Frank's first season as Tottenham head coach is going to look. And I think, as is always the case with a new manager coming in, it's always filled with optimism and hope. I think the only sort of person in recent years that we've had in charge where we haven't necessarily felt that was when Nuno was in charge. And yeah, I don't know if I feel that this is the same sort of appointment, because Thomas Frank, I think the general consensus among the fan base is that Thomas Frank is a brilliant head coach. He is an excellent man manager, and he is very adaptable. And that is going to be the key, because if you look at the teams that we're playing in our first 10 games, they all play very different styles of football. Compare Burnley to Manchester City, two opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of how they actually play. One will be very defensive, low block. One will be on the front foot, attacking. Bournemouth, they are very aggressive in their pressing. Again, West Ham, under Graham Potter, quite defensive. So it's a lot of mixing and matching. And whereas with Ange Postecoglou, we would have just played one way against all of these teams. Classic attacking Ange ball. Go for goals, go for the kill. Thomas Frank will not do that. And the most interesting thing will be seeing whether these adaptations, whether these changes in formations, whether it's a 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, whether it's a 3-5-2, how they work and how we set up. Against Manchester City, we always forfeit the ball. Even when Ange was in charge, really, it's impossible to have more possession than Manchester City on the ball, I feel. So it'll be really interesting to see how Frank sets up for that sort of thing. But I think more interestingly, this first game of the season against Burnley, will he be really aggressive? Will he be attacking? Will we see, I guess, aspects of Ange Postecoglou and how he set his Tottenham teams up against these lesser oppositions, if you want to label them? Or will he forfeit more of the ball and play a more defensive style just to sort of bed his players in, bed his tactics in, and not take too many risks? That's the thing that I'm most interested to see. And to be honest with you, now that the fixtures are out, I am actually getting quite excited for the new campaign. It is still a long way away yet. I think we've still got a month really until we go out on tour for our pre-season, and then the Super Cup is just a few days before the season starts. But we are fully integrated into our new chapter now. I cannot wait to hear the first thing that Thomas Frank says as Tottenham manager, how he's going to try and get the fans on side. I need us to start moving in the transfer window because so much needs doing to this squad and we're sitting still compared to a lot of other teams. I'm sure a lot of you also saw this interview between Daniel Levy and Vinay, our new CEO as well, which was a very interesting watch. I recommend you go watch that if you haven't already. Yeah, let me know down in the comments what game you are looking forward to the most in the upcoming season? Is it the North London derby? They always scare me a little bit. Is it against Manchester United because we have such good history against them in recent years? How well do you think Thomas Frank is going to do at Tottenham? Can he be a big upgrade on the league form that we saw under Andrew Postecoglou last season? How many more wins are we going to get than we did last season? And can we keep our loss counter to a minimum? It would be really nice to see. I do have a lot of hope. I'm excited to see how Thomas Frank goes about setting up his team and getting us into the swing of how he wants us to play. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you have enjoyed, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. I will have plenty more content around Spurs on the way in the coming days and weeks and months. I'm working on a transfer video as we speak, and be sure, as I said, to subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss it. But that's all from me for now. Again, let me know what you think of the Tottenham's fixtures in the comments. Enjoy the rest of your week, and as always, come on, you Spurs.